We're 24 hours in from this post-election announcement of Trump being the 47th president. And while a lot of people are excited, the battles that he faced in relation to trying to make America great again will be very challenging because he's facing close to $36 trillion and counting worth of debt with a currency that's lost 98% of its purchasing power. And that's going to ramp up even faster in the days ahead. And so while people are excited about the change that might be underway, no matter what, there's going to be some pain. Let's talk about this. All right, so I wanted to take a minute, share some thoughts in reference to just a little bit of the numbers. Let's talk math a little bit. And so while it's a lot of excitement in the air because of Trump getting back into office, based upon the long list of promises that he's laid out in reference to what he's going to attempt to do, but then again, it's going to be an uphill battle because the powers that be, the forces that are against him, those that have been in power for the last, 4 years now, that has completely unraveled everything he did before, they're not going to give up easy. And so it's my opinion that within the next days before the transition over, we're going to have a lot of market volatility as well as potential upheaval within the streets. Hence the idea that we have protests beginning in Chicago. And it's my suspicion that a lot of those activists are paid provocateurs that have been intentionally placed there to cause some issues in reference to expressing their displeasure in the results of the election. But then at some point, like always, it seems to turn into some type of negative event. And that's where we're going to have to pray that that's not the case. But then again, how will the markets respond is what we're going to be watching. So in this video here, we want to share some visual aids. It really paints a picture as to where, regardless of what your political affiliation is, think about the bigger picture, well beyond your current emotions of being excited that you think the change is coming, but yet change can't come without pain. It's mathematically impossible because of the numbers I'm about to share with you. So as always, if you guys want to see more of these little short, quick takes, definitely subscribe, join the community. Definitely love to connect with you. Leave a comment down below and I try to interact with as many comments as I can. But other than that, I want to dive into some images first and foremost. So here we got the national debt. And this is something I love to use because it's very telling of what we're really up against. And so while a lot of people want to just talk about the exciting things of the economy because we have the world reserve currency. At this current moment, there's a lot of things happening around us that makes it suspect at this current moment because it's my personal opinion, based upon the math I'm going to show you guys, that within the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, regardless of what takes place within our country, the world has already made some tough decisions, and it has nothing to do with being centered and dependent upon the Federal Reserve note like the way it has been over the last 100 years. So as you can see here, national debt, 35.9 trillion, and this thing doesn't go backwards. It only goes up, and it has to go up because that's a part of how this entire system is built. It's debt based. And so the moment that clock stops or the moment that clock goes in reverse, that's when the economy starts to contract on itself, i.e. deflation. And deflation is the complete opposite of how the system is built. So therefore, there's going to be market disruptions because if this number doesn't go up and the monetary base overall from the commercial bank side of things continue to expand, then the previous debts that are in existence will not be able to be serviced, i.e. with just touching the interest payments is what they're doing now. And as you can see here, the current debt load is 122% of our GDP. Therefore, Uncle Sam owes 22% more than he's able to even begin to think about or servicing. So we're well beyond the threshold of no return. And I think I saw a stat where there's been 3 or 4 countries that have reached this type of level, and it always ends badly. And so as of right now, the longest standing country with a GDP to debt over ours is Japan. And Japan is currently going through an extremely interesting time because that country has been used by the globalists as the experimentation bed that the MMT policy has been implemented, where they issue excessive amounts of debts, and then the central bank comes in and buy it and holds on its balance sheet as an asset, where they flooded the world with currencies. And the yen is basically a reserve currency, but then again, it's only valuable to the Japanese as well as those in the investment realm, the foreign exchange market. So here we got, let me just give you some more here. So outside of this 35 trillion idea that right now we have debt per taxpayer, as you can see above my head here, is $272,000, of which you as a taxpayer are on the hook for. That would equate to this total here, never going to be repaid. And then you get to the bottom. Let's just look at some of the other debts. Unfunded debt interest. And so as you can see here above my head, we're looking at, let me get my screen here. We're looking at $5.2 trillion of total interest paid. That's about 20,000 per person. And it says U.S. total debt as of right here is $102 trillion. Total personal debt, 25 trillion. Bank interest received, 1.1 trillion. And this is just some mathematical anomalies that will make anybody wonder. And then we go over here to the very bottom. And these numbers right here is what bakes the cake, because these numbers here, there's not enough currency in existence that's available to even begin paying down or anything of that nature. And that has everything to do with, as you see above my head, Social Security liabilities, 27 trillion. Medicare liability, 41 trillion. And then we have U.S. unfunded liabilities, $200 trillion. And so at this current moment, these numbers that I'm calling off, these are just mathematical anomalies, because there's not enough currency available that's free floating to be able to service those debts, nevertheless try to pay them off. So there is no ever touching the principal of our debts. So whatever is promised by the Trump administration, there's no type of math calculations that can come in existence that would allow us to outgrow the current level of debts we have. And so that lets me know that regardless of anything promised, whether he abolished the IRS, take away income taxes, all those things, the government is running a deficit of close to 2 trillion. And so there will be no growth, barring some type of divine intervention, or if he's allowed to unleash some of the technologies that our government has to actually benefit the people, then perhaps we could see some type of growth that would spur the American populace as well as the world to produce more than we consume. But as of right now, because we're built on consumption, I'm not quite sure how that's going to go. And the consumption from the retail side of things is all based on credit. And so we have credit accessibility because there's always a lender on the other end. And that lender happens to have been foreign countries that have been willing to buy our debt. But now there's no longer a necessity for nations to hold on to it, i.e. what the BRICS are doing and things of that nature. That brings everything into question. So how creditworthy are we as a nation? And to let you know how creditworthy we are, let me just share with you some other things that's worth paying attention to as well. So here we have the 10-year Treasury, which is the most liquid, some would say asset. I would call it a liability because, once again, it's a 10-year Treasury note issued by our government monthly, according to whatever they decide they need to package up as an offering. And they receive capital that they then use to just touch the interest and to pay previous bills. So imagine compounding debt. Imagine you've been in a position where you get every month a new credit card that you can swipe, and you swipe it and you spend. But then again, the bill always adds up, and you just, the next month you swipe it to touch the interest of the month before. And then the next month you swipe it to touch the interest of the month before. That is what our system is built upon. And so as of right now, the reason I show this is because it is becoming more expensive for our government to operate the way that it has in times past. So what does that mean? That means that borrowing will become more burdensome for our government. So since Trump left office, he left office in a time where our debt payments load was very low compared to where it is now. He left office around here about 2% or less than 2%. And as of now, he stands to inherit an environment where we're at 4.43. And it's good to say by January of next year and in February, because of the volatility I'm talking about now, because of uncertainty, because of market questions, and because of how this year might end with the Federal Reserve cutting rates, where the world is basically telling us that they demand more interest on the debt that they buy from us, we can see 5%, maybe even 6%, to where that's not a very favorable environment for a president to come into expecting to make America great again and to spur growth. And so this is just the debt structure. Now, when you look even closer, our debt is our currency. So our currency is a derivative of the debt issued by our government. So we got the Treasury and the Federal Reserve working together hand in hand. The government borrows and the Federal Reserve monetizes through open market operations. Then the banks come in and turn it into currency on their ledger, and they pass it to the accounts of the Treasury. This one big cycle. Okay. But what they're passing around are digits of the Federal Reserve note structure, as well as paper units that are then monetized when people go to the bank to try to withdraw paper. And so once again, what we've witnessed from the Federal Reserve having basically drained our nation of its wealth and prosperity for the last 100 plus years is the fact that our currency, as of right now, does not carry anywhere near the amount of value that's needed to make it something that would be considered great. So as you can see above my head here, the purchasing power of the consumer dollar is down 98%. So from Woodrow Wilson in 1913 to Donald Trump possibly in January 20th of 2025, we're not working with much. So all the promises he makes, we're going to cut taxes, we're going to put more money in your pocket. Once again, he's talking about these units that they in of themselves are a part of the problem. So for every one piece of paper that we have, that much more of units are required to acquire the same goods. So if you go back above my head here to the 50s and 60s, people who are probably watching, the gas was a quarter. You can eat a meal at McDonald's for less than $1 because there was more purchasing power. You could acquire more real world items with a unit than you can now. And it's good to say, in my opinion, because he's such a crypto enthusiast, it's not that he's a crypto advocate, it's that he plans on rebranding our currency structure. And he's made it clear already how he's going to do that. He's going to use stable coins. So the US government will somehow adopt a new legislative / monetary policy that will include using digital stable coins as derivatives or an extension for our Federal Reserve note system. And so even though he talked about not using a CBDC, he still will use digital representations of our rebranded currency because it's predominantly digital already. But now they're going to enhance that so that they can use it to continue to put these digital representations of dollars into the hands of the world beyond the way that it's currently structured. So moving forward, a lot of promises have been made, will be made. Many of them will not and cannot be kept because there's no purchasing power left in our current currency. So there will be more pain because inflation will come back as the deficit picks up. The debt borrowing costs will continue to climb, and barring some type of true innovative way of spurring growth, there can be no growth and there can only be pain from a financial standpoint for our country. So these are some things that you won't hear from Fox News, CNBC, or any other pundits really outside of those who just look at the macro picture. Just follow the debt. The debt tells it all. There has never been a country in human civilization that has carried this much debt that hasn't ended badly. And I just don't think that we're going to be the first country that succeeds. But in between all, that's why I encourage you to take matters into your own hands. Don't rely solely on these pieces of paper because, once again, those are the weapons of choice between the Treasury and the Fed and our government in general. And you factor in, we have the euro dollar system, which is a whole nother ball game. They can create those things as much as they want to meet their obligations. But then again, the question is, what will it buy you? And over time, not much. So that's why it's never been more important to get your weight up, get physical. And then if you're going to speculate, because that's where the powers that be would like to have a lot of this currency flow as a back hatch for the system, then you're going to have cryptos and things of that nature. But being tangible in real assets is going to be crucial because those will be the recipients of all the liquidity that's going to be created in the days ahead, because I'm still predicting 10 trillion easy overnight. The moment we have a next glitch or hiccup or banking event or crises or stock collapse or housing something, 10 trillion quick, then 30-40 trillion quick within a year, which is extremely inflationary. And this is just me being far left field, 10-4 hat type of person. But based upon the past, we have enough to really say that anything is possible, and that's not far-fetched. So the government would do anything to keep its doors open and to keep their jobs. And it has nothing to do with protecting and preserving our future. And then on the last note, here is those that will be hurt the most. Here you have the same graph that purchasing power being debased has ruined and diminished the future of those that are holders. So as you can see, we have the greatest generation were the ones that were in the early phases of the Federal Reserve. So the greatest generation here, 1913, all the way up till 1927, 28, before the Great Depression hit. And that was the greatest generation. They were the generation that received the initial promises. They still had gold and silver in their hands, in their pockets. That was still money. Then you have silent generation. This is the Great Depression generation that literally didn't trust banks, decided to literally hold everything on their own under a mattress somewhere. And then gold was confiscated. So people couldn't have gold unless it was actually something in the form of jewelry or a small numismatic coin, yada, yada, yada. So this began the transition of the currency, as we can see, because it's only downhill from there. And then following that, you have the baby boomers. This came at the time of war. We had World War II heading into the Vietnam War, and then we had a major economic boom, but the government ran a lot of deficits, hence the decline here of the purchasing power of our dollar. We have Generation X, those born during the era of love. We have the 70s and early 80s. This was a high inflationary period. As we can witness here, they decoupled gold as a monetary medium from the world, and here we have the fiat system created, and it's been downhill ever since as far as the lack of purchasing power. And so here we are now. Generation Y and Z are the recipients of a lack of purchasing power. And then last, you have that Generation Alpha, those born within the last 10 plus years that will have no financial future whatsoever under this current paradigm, because our currency will be restructured entirely. Therefore, they will have solely digital units in some other form of currency that will be labeled a USD dollar, but then again, it will not look the same, and eventually they will not have these as well. So this is just a little historical lesson of what we can expect based upon history. Once again, it's your responsibility to protect yourself financially, because no government will do anything against themselves to put more purchasing power in your pocket, which would then lessen their control over your lives. So expect more of the same, just in a different form. But then again, I believe this is all part of a greater plan that we'll eventually find out sooner or later. But anyway, quick, short, and sweet. Here's to your guys' thoughts. Drop a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. Where did I miss it? What could I have added? Teach me something if you don't mind in the comment section. If you enjoyed this, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Shalom.